Hello folks, Jerry here, and today I have a super exciting video for you guys. I was working on this one for quite a bit, but here we are. Now, as you guys might know, a couple of months ago, and by a couple of months I mean almost a year, I made a full list of all the cars that we know would be in Auto Legends, and today we are making an updated version of that. So we're also gonna be spicing things up a little bit by adding some scores from 1 to 5 in the categories of popularity, raceability, meaning how good it is to race, and the wow factor, which I mean that should speak for itself. There's gonna be a bunch of different cars in here, and some of the cars will even come in different versions. So for example, we have the regular shitbox Civic, and we also have the Type R. Now there's also another catch. Some of the cars we have seen in, like, you know, recent versions of the game. Some of the cars like the Golf R32 and the Zonda we haven't seen in a while, and some of the cards we have only seen in promotion material on the website. So along with every car, I'm also gonna show you where we have seen it. So that should be about it. Let's hop into it. We are starting off with a pretty cool one, the Acura NSX, the first generation. This is definitely in one of the recent versions of the game. We have seen it stanced, and I mean, honestly, I love this car, but for the popularity, I gave it a 3 out of 5, and that's mostly just because I know what it was like on Racing Rivals, where it wasn't one of the more special cars. It was in fact one of the starter cars for A-Class over there, and I mean, in Auto Legends, we don't know what car classes will look like, so yeah, it's gonna be a 3 out of 5 for the popularity, as well for the raceability. I mean, the NSX, it looks like a seriously cool car, but I don't think it's gonna be one of the most popular cars that we will see in the game. And for the wow factor, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I think it's definitely gonna be, you know, above average in terms of rarity, but I don't think it's gonna blow anyone away. Next up, we have the Honda Civic, the DX, so the shitbox version, and as for the popularity, this thing is gonna be one of the most popular cars in the game in my opinion, so it's a 5 out of 5 when it comes to popularity, and it's also a 5 out of 5 when it comes to raceability. I think that there's gonna be a lot of racing going on with this car, just like there was back on Racing Rivals. And honestly, my personal hunch is that this could be one of the starter cars. Now, of course, I think the wow factor for the shitbox Civic is going to be a 1 out of 5, the lowest score possible. But I think that just looking at this, it has a ton of potential to be one of the most popular and beloved cars when it comes to Auto Legends. Next up, we have its bigger brother, the Civic Type R, and I think it's going to be pretty popular, but I don't think it's gonna be quite as popular as the DX, just because the DX is gonna be cheaper and more common, so it's, you know, probably gonna be used in pink slips a lot more. So for the popularity, I gave it a 4 out of 5. For raceability, I think it's gonna kick ass, so it's easily a 5 out of 5. And for the wow factor, I actually gave it a 3 out of 5, not only 2, but a 3, just because I think that a lot of the people who are gonna start off with the Civic DX are gonna be like, wow, that's a Type R, that's pretty cool. And I love that we have different versions of the cars in the game. I think that's gonna, you know, open up a ton of more possibilities. People will want better versions of their cars, so I am really looking forward to that. Next up, we have one of my favorite cars of all time, the Mitsubishi 3000 GT, and shockingly, this car also comes in 2 different versions. So we have the base spec and the VR4, and look, honestly, let's talk about the base spec first. And this car, I just don't see it being all that popular. I mean, the VR4 is so cool, and don't get me wrong, I love the regular 3000 GT as well, but I don't see it being all that popular of a platform, just like in real life. Still though, it's seriously cool, but for the popularity, I'm only giving it a 2 out of 5. When it comes to raceability, I think it's gonna be pretty cool, but still, I don't think it's gonna be, you know, one of the best cars in the game to race, so I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. And as far as the wow factor goes, I mean, you have the 3000 GT VR4 in the game, so the regular 3000 GT it's only getting a 2 out of 5 for the wow factor in my opinion, but holy shit, the 3000 GT VR4 is so cool. For the popularity, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. I still think it's sort of an underrated car, but I think a lot of people will really appreciate that this is in the game, including me. Anyway, for the raceability, I think the VR4 is going to be better than the regular 3000 GT, so I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. And for the wow factor, I mean, for me, it's gonna be a 5 out of 5, but you know, me being non-biased, I would say that it's probably gonna be around a 3 out of 5, so similar to the Acura NSX. Next up, we have the shittiest picture that I could possibly find, but hey, I found this car nonetheless, and it was pretty difficult to spot, as you might see in the picture, but that is clearly a Chevrolet Corvette C5, and honestly, I think this car is gonna be super popular. I don't think it's gonna be particularly expensive, so for the popularity, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I do wonder what other Corvettes are gonna be in the game, so I think that that's what the popularity factor is gonna depend on. For the raceability, I'm also gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I think this thing is gonna kick ass. I mean, you know, drag racing, that's what the Corvettes were built for, so this thing, I mean, I'm really happy to see the C5 in the game. I haven't seen it in a new game in quite a while. For the wow factor, I think these are gonna be pretty common, so I'm only gonna give it a 2 out of 5, but still, pretty cool. Next up, the Mazda RX8, and disclaimer, I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure if this is even the Mazda RX8 because we only saw it in one picture where it was heavily modified, and I mean, I think it's an RX8, but it could be a Mazda MX-5. I'm gonna go with my gut though and say that that is an RX8. Anyways, for the popularity, I think that, you know, around a decade ago, this car would be way more popular, but as it is, today I would give it a 3 out of 5 for the popularity. 4 out of 5 for the raceability. I think this car is gonna be kick-ass to race. Could be one of the starter cars as well. As far as the wow factor goes, I mean, it depends on how it's modified, but I would say for most of them it would have to be a 2 out of 5. Next up, it's a car that I love to discuss on this channel, and that is the fourth probe GT. I am so excited that this game is gonna have a fourth probe, not just because I love the fourth probe, but also because of what it represents for Auto Legends. I mean, this is, in my opinion, a seriously cool car, but it's also a completely forgotten car, and the fact that we're getting it in this game, it shows that the developers are not gonna only pick the most cliche cars, you know, like a 350Z or whatever, but they're also gonna have some of the more peculiar cars in the game as well, and that is what I love to see. Oh, I'm so excited, and my prediction for the fourth probe is that this is going to be one of the starter cars, and I think it's going to be the less loved starter car as well, so for the popularity, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. As far as the raceability goes, this thing is only front wheel drive, so I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. But for the wow factor, since I think it's going to be a starter car, it's getting a 1 out of 5, but oh my god, I am seriously excited for this car, as weird as that might sound. Next up, another car which we have only seen in one picture on the website, which has since been switched out. It's the Nissan 350Z, and in case this thing actually comes into the game, it's going to be one of the most popular cars in the game. I'm calling it 5 out of 5 on the popularity scale. For the raceability, I mean, come on, like, this thing kicks ass. I think it's going to be a 5 out of 5 as well. I think this is going to be such a popular and fun car to race. This is going to be one of the staples of Auto Legends. I'm calling it right now. As far as the wow factor goes, it could be a little high, what I'm about to say, but I think it's going to be a 3 out of 5 in the same realm as the NSX and the 3000 GT VR4. Next up, it's a car that has been used heavily in promotion material so far, and that is the Mazda RX7. I think that this thing's actually gonna be really popular, so I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 on the popularity scale, 5 out of 5 for the raceability. Again, similar to the 350Z, I think that this car is going to be extremely popular and well remembered, unlike in racing rivals where the RX7 was pretty bad. I think that's gonna change this time around. As far as the wow factor goes, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5, so pretty similar to the 350Z, except I think the 350Z is going to be slightly more cheap and therefore slightly more popular. Next up, it's actually a body kit version of the RX-7, the RX-7 Savanna. This thing looks like a muscle car. It's pretty crazy, but for the popularity, I'm gonna give this thing a 2 out of 5. I don't think it's gonna be as popular. It looks really interesting, but I sense that this body kit or this version of the RX-7 could be a lot more expensive. The raceability stays the same, so 5 out of 5, but for the wow factor, I think this is going to be a 5 out of 5 just because I think it's going to be pretty rare. Next up, we have the Integras. Let's start off with the GSR, so the entry level. This could be a starter car as well. So I actually think the Civic, the Integra, and the Probe will be the starter cars for Auto Legends. That's just my prediction. But for the popularity, the Integra GSR, I think it's a 5 out of 5. Same for the raceability. These cars, you're gonna see a shitload of them on track, and people will be making memories with them, which is just lovely to see, or will be, you know, in like a year or whatever. For the wow factor, the GSR, I gotta give it a 1 out of 5. If this is a starter car, it's really gonna have no wow factor whatsoever, similar to the Civic DX and the Probe. Next up, we have its bigger brother again, the Integra Type R, and for the popularity, I think this is gonna be actually even less popular than the Civic Type R, so I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. It's gonna be amazing to race, that's my prediction, with a 5 out of 5, and the wow factor, similar to the Civic Type R, I think it's also gonna be a 3 out of 5. Next up, Dodge Charger Hellcat. We actually haven't seen the Challenger yet, but the Charger has been in some of the promotional material on the website, so it's safe to say that it is coming, but this is gonna be difficult to rank compared to the cars that we have seen so far, which are, you know, more old. And the Charger Hellcat, I think it's gonna be pretty popular, probably not as much as the Challenger, which we haven't seen yet, so we're not gonna be discussing it in this video. But the Charger, I would say it's probably gonna be a 4 out of 5 on the popularity. For the raceability, I'm only gonna give it a 3 out of 5. I think that this car could potentially be a pain in the ass to race, and for the wow factor, I'm also gonna give it a 3 out of 5. Next up, we have the Mitsubishi Eclipse. I mean, look, my prediction is that there's going to be 3 starter cars, but if there's 4, I think the Eclipse could potentially be one of them, and even if it's not, I'm still gonna give it a 5 out of 5 on the popularity scale. This is going to be one of the most popular cars in the game. It's gonna be an entry-level car, and it's gonna kick ass. I'm also gonna give it a 5 out of 5 for the raceability. I think that this car is going to be super versatile. We have only seen one version of it so far, but if there's 2, that means that there's gonna be a front-wheel drive version and a 4-wheel drive version with a GST as well, which yeah, that's wow, that's gonna be actually pretty interesting to see how they stack up. But for the wow factor, I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5 just because I love the Eclipse and I cannot give it a 1 out of 5 on the wow factor, because whenever I see an Eclipse in real life, it makes my day. So yeah, it's gonna be a 2 out of 5 on the wow factor. Next up, we have the Mitsubishi Evo 8. Oh, this car back on the racing rivals. Look, it's gonna be a 5 out of 5 on the popularity scale and on the raceability scale as well. For the wow factor, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5, but honestly, this is one of the cars that I am looking forward to racing the most. Next up, we actually haven't seen a lot of the Nissan 240 SX yet. We have only seen it in one picture on the website, which has since been changed. Anyways, this is going to be a super popular car. I'm calling it, once again, 5 out of 5 on the popularity and on the raceability as well. Even though, like, these cars in real life, they're actually getting a lot more rare thanks to, you know, most of them being modified, crashed, or rusted out. Anyway, for the wow factor, I'm gonna give the 240 SX a 3 out of 5. I think it's actually gonna be a bit more impressive to have than the likes of the Eclipse and the Civic DX. So yeah, the 240SX, oh, that car is slowly, well, not slowly, but like, they are like 30 years old at this point. I mean, holy shit, I'm getting old. Anyway, next up we have a polar opposite of the 240SX, and that is the Porsche 911 GT3. This has actually been released in the new version of the website, and look, my personal opinion, it looks completely out of place, but you know, once it's you know, in the company of some cars that we will see a bit lower on this list, I think it's gonna fit in really well, but I don't think it's gonna be super popular because it's gonna be pretty rare. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5, and for the raceability, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I think it's gonna kick ass, but we will see if you know, some of these hypercars or supercars are as popular as some of the cult classics like the 240SX and the Eclipse and the likes of those cars. For the wow factor, I'm gonna give this thing a 4 out of 5. Next up, we have not a Porsche, but a version of a Porsche, and it's the RWB Rementra. I think it's the Rementra. If it's not the Rementra, please let me know. I don't want to mess this up, but I have a bit of a tough time differentiating between RWBs, but I'm quite positive that that is in fact the Rementra. And for the popularity, it's gonna be our first 1 out of 5. I don't think this car is gonna be popular at all. I think it's gonna be very niche, but very adored. I think it's gonna be like a turf car equivalent of like a racing rivals car, I guess. I think that this thing is gonna kick ass. It's gonna be a bit of a pain in the ass to race, just like the Charger Hellcat, so I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5 on the raceability. And for the wow factor, I think that if you you know, hop in a Rementra and hop in a lobby in Auto Legends, everyone is gonna want to race you. 5 out of 5. This is gonna be one of the coolest cars you can possibly have in Auto Legends. Next up, we have this is, out of all the cars for this list, the Skyline R32 is the car that I am the most proud about spotting, because we haven't seen a picture of it. We have only seen a glimpse of it in one of the pictures, but I am quite confident that that is in fact the Skyline R32. If it's not, I will eat my socks. Anyways, popularity, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. I think these will be pretty expensive, so they're not gonna be quite as popular, but they're gonna be extremely cool nonetheless. Raceability, 5 out of 5. This thing is gonna be sick to race, and for the wow factor, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. Next up, we have its younger brother, the Skyline R34, and for the popularity, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I think these have enough of a cult following to be even more popular than the R32, even though, you know, I think they're gonna be even more expensive. For the raceability, another 5 out of 5, and for the wow factor, I'm also gonna give it the 4 out of 5, same as the Skyline R32. Next up, we are getting to the cream de la cream, the Pagani Huayra. Popularity 1 out of 5. You won't see many of these in the game, I don't think, but when you do, I think it's gonna be a pretty special day. Now, this car was known to be shit to race in racing rivals. I hated the way the Pagani Huayra drove in racing rivals, so 2 out of 5 for the raceability, just because of that. As far as the wow factor goes, I think it's clearly a 5 out of 5. Same as the next one, the McLaren P1. Popularity, 1 out of 5. Again, you won't see many of these, I think even less than the Huayras, but I do think it's gonna be slightly better to race. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5 on the raceability. Potentially could be even better, but the P1 was also pretty mediocre to race back on racing rivals as well. I know it's not really related to how it's gonna be in Auto Legends, but hey, I mean, I played racing rivals for years, so I guess I'm allowed to be biased a little bit. The wow factor, clearly 5 out of 5. Next up, we have a hypercar, which we actually have seen in racing, in Auto Legends in very early stages of the game, but we actually haven't seen it in a while, and that is the Pagani Zonda. I think it's gonna be slightly more popular than the Huayra and the P1, so I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5 on the popularity scale. For the raceability, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5, and as far as the wow factor goes, I mean, for me personally, if I saw a Zonda, I would be even more excited than if I saw the Huayra. I guess I'm getting old and I prefer cars from like the 2000s, as you know, older people do, I guess. Anyway, next up we are getting to the Subarus, and first up we have a car which we have seen a lot of, but only on the website. We actually haven't seen it in the game yet, and that is the Subaru Impreza 22B. One of the earliest versions of the Impreza, and honestly one of my favorites. Popularity, I think it's gonna be a 4 out of 5. It's gonna be a super popular car, but I don't think it's going to be one of the cars to race, unlike on the racing rivals. As far as the raceability goes, I think it's gonna be pretty cool, so I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. As far as the wow factor goes, these are actually pretty sought after these days, so I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. Next up, we actually have both the Bug Eye and the Blob Eye versions of the Subaru Impreza. Let's start off with the Bug Eye. Unless this is going to be like a starter car or given away for really cheap, I think this car is not going to be particularly popular. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5. For the raceability, I think it's going to be slightly better, and I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. Now, as far as the wow factor goes, look, I'm gonna be biased. I have always preferred the look of the Blob Eye, so for the Bug Eye, the WRX, so not the STI, I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 5 on the wow factor. Now let's start off with the WRX STI, the Bug Eye. I think it's gonna be more popular. I think it's gonna be overall less popular than the Blob Eye, but I'm still gonna give it a 3 out of 5 for the popularity, 4 out of 5 for the raceability, and the wow factor, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. Next up, we have the regular WRX Blob Eye. I think it's going to be more popular than the Bug Eye. I think it's going to be around as good to race, so a 3 out of 5 on that scale, and the wow factor is going to be a 2 out of 5. Look, to wow someone, I think you're gonna really need a WRX STI. Speaking of WRX STI, let's talk about the Blob Eye. I think it's going to be a 3 out of 5 on the popularity, 4 out of 5 for the raceability, so similar to the Bug Eye WRX STI. And the wow factor, I think it's going to be slightly higher at a 3 out of 5, so similar to the Evo 8. We're now getting to the final few cars on this list, and let's talk about the Toyota Supra Mark IV next. This is going to be a 5 out of 5 on the popularity scale. Honestly, I think this is going to be an icon of the game as soon as the game comes out. It's gonna be a 5 out of 5 on the raceability as well. I mean, we know that these are infinitely tunable, and for the wow factor, even though it's gonna be super common, I'm still gonna give it a 3 out of 5 because I think that the Supra is actually that cool. I'm not 12, but I think the Supra is actually fairly rated, even though all the fanboys, you know, I mean, it's like a stock Supra is not gonna be a fucking Veyron, but okay, that's a whole another rant. Anyway, Mark V Supra, that's a contrast. I think it's going to be a 1 out of 5 on the popularity scale. I don't see it. I think that a lot of people, or most people, will gravitate towards older stuff, and if you have cars, you know, like the Skylines and the 350Z, I think the Mark V Supra is probably going to be overshadowed. With that said, I think it's gonna be pretty good to race, not as good as the Mark IV, but I think it's gonna be a 4 out of 5 on the raceability scale. And for the wow factor, honestly, since I don't think these are going to be particularly common, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. And the final car is actually a pretty cool one as well, the Volkswagen Golf R32. I don't see this one being all that popular. I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5 on the popularity scale. Pretty good to race though. These are 4-wheel drives, so 4 out of 5 on the raceability scale. And as far as the wow factor goes, I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5. But honestly, I think that this car is probably going to be underrated in the game. The R32 honestly is pretty cool. And bam, that is the list so far. Obviously it's gonna get bigger, but I'm pretty happy with what we have so far, and I'm also really happy that we have multiple versions of the same car. That is something that I have always wanted to see in a racing game, and the fact that Auto Legends has it just makes me even more excited. And yeah, so my predictions for the starter cars, I mean, honestly, yeah, I'm calling it the Civic, the Probe, the Eclipse, and maybe the RX8 and the Integra. We're gonna have to see how many options we actually have for the starter cars, but the Civic, I think it's a given, and the Probe as well. Anyways, what are your predictions for the starter cars? I am really curious, but yeah, I love the diversity. I think that this is a very healthy list to start the game off with, and honestly, I can't wait for the alpha, which should be coming out relatively soon. Please, for the love of God, let us play the game. I'm begging you, developers. Anyways, that's gonna be about it. Obviously, I am stoked about this game. I have been working my ass off lately, but hopefully when Auto Legends comes out, I will have enough time to actually, you know, make content regularly, because that is what I want to do, because this is how excited I am for this game. That's gonna be about it. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time. Take care.